Yeah, I did it.
He was not prepared to.
He wasn't. Oh, jeez.
Well, Lagos, you can find Ikemesit on Twitter at George Ike. Sometimes I confuse it. What 09 4440981. That's 0809 444 0981.
Indeed, you can also find us up on YouTube where we will be streaming in just a bit. Go to youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos, and of course, you can tweet at us using the hashtag freshlypressed981. Last but not least, you can also send us messages to our WhatsApp number, and we will tweet that WhatsApp number to you right now. So now let's go into the detailed newspaper analysis.
Guardian newspaper. PenCom lauds pension reforms. 8 billion has commended a series of reforms in the sector over the years.
So on the one potential retirees and employees has pushed from actually 6.6 trillion as at I think that was the beginning of last year to about 8 trillion. But then industry operators are flagging a few red flags, and so the acting director of PenCom, Aisha Dahir Umar, and stakeholders in the industry are concerned that employers are in the habit of not remitting pension debt, and they plan to shut employees to speak up. So essentially a call to arms to those who have RSAs and are signed up with a pension fund administrator to ensure that they more rigorously police their employers. And so the president of the Pension Funds Operators Association of Nigeria, Devoe Okorie, said that the issue of non-compliant workers' pension fund challenging. Now, under the law, 7 days of paid, a deduction from the employee's salaries and the employer's contribution should be remitted into an RSA. But she said that you've got situations where typically employers are not making remittances 2, 3, 4 months. I know we've talked here on Freshly Pressed over time that some interested operators, including federal government and some state governments, are owing arrears of pensions. When you look at the history of pension reform in Nigeria, or defined benefit scheme to the current scheme under the contributory pension scheme, one of the key aims of that reform was to get us away from the situation where employers are running the deficit in terms of their contributions, and it seems like that situation is slowly creeping back in, and it's giving pension operators a lot of worry because why we left the old for the new. And so if we're seeing a situation where those trends are re-emerging, then that's something to really take note of. So yeah, 8 trillion naira in deposits. Pension operators are looking at investing in such things that is as infrastructure. I know I've been privy to some of the conversations going on within the industry about what's going on. But when you have a situation where the core and the bedrock that continues to undergird and underpin the success story that we've had in pensions, I mean, when it is potentially under threat, then it is something to have a conversation about.
All right, thank you very much, Ikemesit, for that analysis and that story. Sticking with the Guardian with this for this next one, federal government orders verification of tax clearance certificates. Now, the federal government yesterday issued a directive to all ministries, departments, and agencies, AMDAs in short. They said people who need to authenticate the verification exercise or the certificates really themselves should go to the website tcc.firs.gov.ng, click on verify eTCC, enter the TCC number, complete the CAPTCHA, and click on submit to view the TCC number entered. They said this is a measure to get companies and individuals in the tax clearance issues really. Devoe?
Yes. Let me rename this story as No Illegal Hands in the Cookie Jar. Now, basically here, as we know, that's the federal government being the largest driver of the economy, and in most cases, the attempts or the insinuations that it's those who work for government that eat the meat of this country. Well, the finance ministry is ensuring that even those that have their hands in that pot are legally qualified, meaning that they have paid their taxes up to date and that they are legit. So finance minister is saying that up till the 22nd of August 2017, when they digitalized the process, that the ones that came before them, many of them came through the manual process, and that manual process gave an opportunity for a lot of forging that they have discovered in many cases. So they've instituted this process to authenticate and verify. And for those who had tax clearances before that date should forward their letters to the ministry for authentication.
I have a question, Devoe. What do you think the compliance level of this is really going to be, especially when we consider that in things of even national importance, as our budgets across the MDAs are constantly pointed at for failing to meet with established procedure and established rules. So how much more so can we expect that people now being asked to suddenly present authenticated certificates are going to do just that?
Well, then you now speak of enforcement. Does the Minister of Finance have the capacity to enforce this rule on all the... For my recommendation, even before I asked that question, was that this should have been a whole... And in the procurement process, as you do know, having passed the first stage of registration, which is at the ministry stage, maybe the finance ministry should have another check after that stage to ensure, because they will make the payments. At the point of payments, after the contract has been done, they will do a verification again to ensure that the people who passed and had gotten the contracts were fully qualified. Yes, it's a leakage that they want to plug, and I believe they should work even harder to ensure that they make this happen. The whole idea is ensuring that everybody pays this tax as they should, and if government gives out the largest piece of the cake, then those people who partake in it should be fully paid up in their taxes. Lastly, they've said for those who have manual certificates before August 27, make use of VADES. VADES was an opportunity, it's a window that's still open to many operators to declare their assets and identify themselves as fully paid up. That window, I think many people don't understand how it works, but it's an opportunity to actually you declare your own tax, what you've made, and then you pay a percentage to that extent to the government. Whether that works for you in business or not, that is your decision to make, but the government is giving you an opportunity.
There's a window,
Yes, giving you a window to clear all this up before, what do they call them? Not the IRS. What we have is FIRS.
FIRS. Do you pay
Yes.
Well, Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Some of us are global, I'm sorry.
Moving on.
Cool, global living.
I know, right? Moving on.
That's a better echo.
Okay. Ikemesit, since you're speaking now, let me bring you the story. It's from ThisDay newspaper. It says over 2,000 IDPs, internally displaced persons, escorted home by soldiers. It said the paper actually wrote that it's been an earnest desire of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Burutai, who's been he's actually been looking to ensure that IDPs who are willing to return home begin a normal life, and they're assisted or escorted home by the soldiers. And this is what has started happening, that over 2,000 IDPs from the Guzamala local government area that fled at the peak of the Boko Haram insurgency to Maiduguri in Borno State were escorted back home yesterday by the Nigerian military.
Yeah, so these IDPs, actually 2,043 of them, representing 378 households, were transported from Ibakasi camp in Maiduguri, and these are the first batch of IDPs to be escorted back to the northern part of Borno. So they've been displaced from those communities in the northern part of Borno. And until recently, those areas have been threatened by pockets of insurgents until a military operation, codenamed Operation Last Hold, was launched in the area, which significantly reduced the insurgent threat. Worth noting that in the northeast, when you look at the geography of the northeast, there are certain parts that have been more impacted than others, even though the entire region has been under the throes of the insurgency. And northern Borno, which is geographically contiguous with southwestern Chad and southwest and southeastern Niger, right, especially the infamous Difa region, right, has been significantly impacted by the activities of insurgents. So this is great news. I'm just reading the story. There's no comments. So so the military's perspective is overrepresented, I think, and there's little or no commentary on this from the perspective of the IDPs. I suppose that might shine through in the days and weeks ahead, because to be interesting to know if this was done with their consent voluntarily,
or were they forced.
because that is actually a possibility. But let me not don my conspiracy hat yet on and actually build a decent and meaningful livelihood. I'm not very certain, not necessarily from what. So let's see how it goes.
All right, very quickly, we've got a few messages that are coming in this morning. And remember that if you want to tweet at us, just use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. Miss Ayomide up on Twitter says, openness and transparency are key ingredients to building accountability and trust in the nation's tax system. This is why verification of all tax clearance certificates is necessary to ensure accountability and to foster the tax system reform. It's a good step by the federal government, says Miss Ayomide. While we've got a message in from who says, talking about pensions, I know some HR recruiting firms that don't remit pensions of employees. Please, what is the best way to bring them to justice? I think you can report to PenCom.
Yeah.
Their members, especially the state civil servants, enjoy these benefits. Now, it is high time that the NLC, especially at the state level, raise their voice to fully implement group life insurance, or else the corruption circle in the civil service continues, says Prince. Interesting.
Thank you very much. Keep your messages coming into WhatsApp 0809. The next story is from the Guardian news. President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu, to immediately lead a federal government delegation to Bauchi State of the rainstorm that destroyed 1,505 homes. In the delegation is also the General of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, Mustafa Yunusa Maihaja. They are all going there to undertake an assessment of the extent of damage. They said there was a fire incident as well in the Azari market a few days later. When we look at this story, Devoe, would you say the move is going to bring results? And it's a very sad situation, really, when you look at it.
Yeah, so we commiserate with our brothers and sisters in the north regarding this natural and man-made disaster, all taking place in Bauchi. The natural disaster, which was the heavy wind rainstorm, scattered 500 few and injured many, while a few days after they had a fire disaster at a market in another part of Bauchi. The president's delegation has the DG of the National Emergency Management Agency, Mustafa Mahija, who has been taking an assessment and ensuring that relief materials are being supplied to them. Now, one question must be asked: and also the disco there, that's the Jos Electricity Distribution Company, did come up. They had no hand in the destruction because of the many power lines that came down, that they were party to it. That was premeditated, but they said no, it was a natural disaster that took in this situation, and it will take a while for them to repair and get things back to order. The president also took an opportunity, it's still in the same report, to congratulate renowned professor of economics and mathematics, dear Ogwash academia, Professor Chukwuka Okonjo.
Says the B of Ogwash.
Yes, he is the lovely husband of our past finance minister. Yeah. Nevertheless, what we would take note is in these parts of the country that are prone to natural disasters, two aspects of town planning need to take precedence. The building permits.
Yeah.
How are the buildings built, to the extent that each time there's a little natural disaster, they're easily destroyed.
So much damage.
Yeah. Secondly, drainage infrastructure. The southeast has had this issue for a long while, but it seems that the rains are moving towards the middle belt-ish, and we've had series of these issues. Each time they'll let us know that they're going to be flood waters either from the dam or natural, but yet it seems that nothing actually is done. We will always come back here and read of the destruction and damage of how the homes, and then on top of our man-made crisis of the IDPs coming from the insurgency and what's been going on with the herdsmen, we now have more so to speak, or internally displaced people who we have to take care of. This is a huge bill to the government. I really don't know how much they can do.
All right, thank you very much for that, Devoe. Moving on, we've got more stories to get into, and we're going to this one from NNP, from the Punch newspaper. This is in from the Punch. NNPC repairs pipeline power generation increases by 1,304 megawatts. So earlier in the week, we'd actually spoken about issues concerning our power. We've spoken about the ruptured line, but now we've been told that the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has fixed the gas pipeline that was ruptured on Friday, and that think there's a significant improvement going forward.
The gas rupture, that's along the hovering at 3.8. So expect light to be restored back to its former state, which meant that you would have some light. It's not yet reliable.
Okay.
Now, we are looking forward because 2019 is coming. This supposed to have been one of the mandates of this government to supply, improve it to some extent. Power is a whole block holding operations. Maybe they might have to relook at those engagements to see carry out the renewable energy utilization, the debottlenecking of the power grid, meaning maybe regions should now be responsible for their own supplies, so that we don't go through this long perennial questions and issues that never get solved.
Okay, Devoe, a number of things that you mentioned, we are seeing some sort of traction in the power sector in a number of those areas. So you talk about renewable energy, we are seeing more smaller communities that are taking that on board. Although again, there have been issues flagged. Yes, you want to use solar to power things, but can it power heavy machinery? The amount of solar power required for that, problematic. Or looking at the discos, the internal funding issue, can they afford to the extent where we're now trying to criminalize estimated billing? The discos are not very happy with that. I mean, it's a real intense chicken and egg situation here. So what sort of short-term move do you think could help us get out of this?
Well, the truth is, I always say, even though they call him the Minister of Darkness, Fashola's hands are tied. His hands are tied around legislation. This is what I expected Saraki, Dogara, and the host of fat cats in the National Assembly to have dealt with. This on this alone, Fashola, the legislative capacity and flexibility. I'm sure he had. We've known
They
him.
can't do it alone. Power has to be yanked of the exclusive legislative.
No,
list.
but they
So it
can.
requires a constitutional amendment.
But I don't think the executive were against that.
Okay.
You've got to get the states on board as well.
No, I don't think anybody would have been against this. But if you see, look
You
at
this
it.
stuff.
You think?
You might be,
Look
you,
at that.
you might be in for a surprise.
Look at us till date. We're still discussing power.
Lights.
We haven't gone beyond 4,000.
Devoe Ikemesit, as you're chipping in there, let's now talk about other things that the government is doing. I know Devoe had mentioned things with regards to planning violations, and we're seeing Lagos State acting in a way that some people would describe as a bit extreme or a bit. Gives us the headline: Lagos government locks up buildings, shuts tenants in. The officials of Lagos State Building Control Agency have sealed 5 buildings on Allen Avenue, Lagos. We came across the story again with the warning saying that this would happen. They were saying that these buildings were originally residences or built for residential purposes, or at least that's the permit, but people had converted them to commercial use. We know that this happens across Lagos, but when we look at the statement at the bottom here from a Lagos State official saying what the agency is telling them is to come and regularize the process and get approval for the commercial purpose. Are they actually trying to enforce this for safety reasons, or is this a monetary drive?
I mean, in Lagos, when we hear the word regularize, and it's coming from the mouth of a state government official, we all know what it really means, you know. So, but I'm just putting out there as a filler. So here is the thing. Away from the story, the story covers 2 interviews. The caretaker of the building claimed the property was for commercial purposes and was surprised by the way the use of the building has evolved. While the tenant said that the buildings have always been for both residential and commercial purposes, and he says that he had lived there for 35 years. The point is, when we talk about the fact that the Lagos State government is interested in making Lagos a smart city, building a city for a new for a new age, for the digital future, and everything, you've got to be concerned somewhat about the fact that it seems like there is a different regulatory trust for the urban poor and the urban lower middle class in this city, and that for the upper middle class and the rich parts of Lagos. I was literally at an event yesterday that dealt with urban development and urban renewal and sustainability, and with shining spotlight on evictees from a lot of the slum and informal dwellings that we have in Lagos. First and foremost, I didn't know we had over 300. Did you know that? Over 300 informal settlements in Lagos. 69% of Lagosians live in urban slum-like conditions, according to the international definition by the UN Habitat. And so when you're dealing with people who are comfortable living in informality and the informal sector, and you're trying to get them into the formal sector, and the only way you're interfacing with them is when you're trying to when you're trying to do what we call hard compliance in law, when you're trying to rigidly enforce legal provisions that are there, and the control agencies are the law. But the point is, how many Lagosians have had enough of an interface with state officials and with the security authorities and agents outside of a hard compliance approach?
So
and the answer is,
hearing from you is we live in a city that, like you said, a lot of informal and state government to a large extent they haven't really sensitized people as to where they should be, how they should act, and they haven't been enforcing the laws, because for this to happen in the first place means there hasn't been enforcement, and now they're pushing the enforcement in the harshest way possible. But what would be the safest and most effective way, do you think, to get things like this done? Because also, as residents of Lagos, there are a lot of people who are told and are warned, for example, building homes on in large canals, then we see flooding, then we see deaths, and people don't listen. I mean, Yoruba people say cooking borrow. You are not hearing word. So what do you do in that situation?
So what the state government has to do is the state government has to understand that this is a fundamental issue between balancing the needs of its own requirements of ensuring that Lagos is organized enough and Lagos is regulated enough that it's a healthy environment for all of us to exist in, and for residents to fulfill their business, for survival, to get the kids to school, to have the right to a decent existence and all of that. And so it's going to take a lot of dialogue, community action with local leaders. You can't just have people in uniform wearing badges just coming in and locking people inside their own homes.
Or out of their homes, depending on the narrative you choose. Thank you very much for that, Ikemesit. Moving on very quickly, let's talk about Biafra. IPOB plans a referendum and prints ballot papers, 14 million of them to be precise, we're told. This is according to IPOB spokesman Ima Powerful. And he said, listen, there's going to be a 3-stage referendum. We're going to distribute these ballot papers to all adults in every clan in Biafra land. Devoe, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. How are they going to ensure this is fair? How are they going to deal with the illegality or legality thereof of it? And 40 million, is that rather ambitious? How many people turn out to vote in elections that people actually are aware of? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, this is coming from the Punch. Biafra, that's IPOB, indigenous people of Biafra, have announced plans to hold a referendum. Now, they've produced about 40 million ballot papers, which they said they would distribute to every adult in and clan in Biafra land. Where is Biafra land?
Thank you.
All those in Biafra
Definition number one.
raise their hands up.
Are they aware they're in Biafra land?
Now, secondly, they tried not to call to war, and that Nigeria had done this twice in history. One in 1961, where there was a vote for those who were on the Nigerian-Cameroon front side to make a decision whether they wanted to be with Nigeria or move to Cameroon, and eventually they decided on the Cameroon end and moved on. That was in 1961. 1963, there was a Midwest region creation that came out from the Yoruba-dominated Western region, which brought about what we refer to as the former Bendel state, which is now Delta and Edo. And he said that this could take place. Point of note, Nigeria is a country. Biafra is still a concept. So it's very difficult for you to make such references. Secondly, I think the paper didn't do justice to. Thank you. Now, I think they are a self-actualization group because it is a right. You have that within the Constitution. My recommendations for IPOB. You've come against the grain many times over. I think there are smarter ways to achieve this purpose if you want to. One, you could become a political party within the Nigerian political game and win the elections. If you claim you have the numbers, go ahead and win the elections over. Two, you can become a social-political that has brought a difference in the people. Have Biafra built schools? Has Biafra created scholarships?
That's a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot of questions there.
Brilliant.
Appreciate that.
And this was the message on WhatsApp. It says the power dip was caused by sabotage. That's a menace we need to deal with. Yes, I guess 16 hours of at least every day of power. The review of power contracts will never happen. Lagos State is already on its way to generating close to 3,000 megawatts by next year. And in reaction to the referendum, it says the Constitution does not allow a referendum. Simple. On Twitter, we have this message from Bolarinwa. It says, you may have left out the most important part of the power value chain. The consumer must be properly metered and pay cost reflective tariffs. Everything else rolls up from there.
Thank you very much for that. Our final bit of news, very sad stuff. 2 people have been killed in yet another Ojuelegba Bridge truck accident. 2 persons died on Tuesday evening after a vehicle was crushed by falling plywood from a truck. We're talking about a truck that was loaded with boards and plywood. It tilted to the side. This fell off. Now, this is one of several incidents that we hear happening in and around Lagos. So my question, Ikemesit, as you analyze this for us in the next couple of minutes, is what do you think the state government should be doing in terms of ensuring safety standards, especially when it comes to large commercial vehicles, which are more often than not the cause of deaths on the road, both in Lagos and across the country? And also, should people be looking against pushing, lawsuits, fines against the owners of these commercial vehicles? Because again, it's just a complete lack of regard for any safety standards.
Yeah, but you're just looking at one side of the story, and so yes, the government needs to do more in terms of enforcing vehicle standards and safety. They should also be looking at enforcing building safety standards with respect to our bridges, because this is the 3rd such incident at the Ojuelegba Bridge since 2015. It was a little jarring for me when I was actually reading the story, because I came into Lagos on Monday night, and on Monday night around 8 p.m. I literally passed under that bridge.
Wow.
Yeah, same spot and all of that stuff. And it's for me to be personal, because I grew up in Ojuelegba, I was born in Surulere. And you've got to look at it holistically. We were talking about regulation enforcement in the last story that we talked about. Now, this is the kind of situation where hard compliance is required, right? And so we need to look at that with respect to lawsuits. In the first such incident that happened in recent times, in September 2015, a family that lost 3 members when a similar situation happened there at the Ojuelegba Bridge actually sued the federal government, sued the Lagos State government, as well as the owners of the trucks. The matter is in the Lagos State High Court now. They are seeking 10 billion naira in compensation, and so it would be interesting to see how that goes and see if that serves as enough of a deterrent. One of the good things about Lagos is people are increasingly becoming aware of their rights from a legal standpoint, and whether it's FSARS or the waste collection regulation fiasco, people are increasingly taking these things to the courts and putting them up in formal citizens. You know what, we need answers to this, and if the state government can get a step ahead of them and actually do what it needs to do or is supposed to do, then that would be necessary. But really sad story all around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and that's all we can take. Apologies, we can't take most of the messages anymore, but we'll get to talk about one of these stories during a time for Lagos Talks 91. That's at 9 o'clock. But coming up next at 8:15, we'll talk sports inside of the locker room. Special thanks to our analyst, Devoe Okorie. Good morning.
Good morning.
A minute and a half of the time means the end of the